People are dealing with heavy stuff. And one of the features of working as a church is that you're a little bit of a conduit for lots of heavy things going on in people's lives. And there's many of you in this room that have shared requests and burdens and concerns even over the last week of things that are happening. Sometimes it's tough stuff that you're dealing with. Sometimes it's good stuff, but it's still like something that weighs on you. We just celebrated my daughter and Noah, their graduation from high school, and that's exciting. That's wonderful. But then I'm thinking like, okay, now we've got this summer to get ready for her to go to college. And Noah's already ready, but I'm not entirely sure about my daughter, so we've got to get some things figured out. Just kidding. We'll figure it out. But it's like, that's exciting, but there's a burden even with that. There's stuff going on in people's lives. There's not a person sitting in this room that doesn't have something happening in their lives that there's some concern about, or maybe they're staying up late a little bit at night thinking about, or they're thinking about somebody else who's got something going on. It's all kinds of stuff. And it's not just in the news stuff. It's not just wildfires and floods and Gaza. It's not that stuff. It's next door neighbor stuff. People are dealing with some heavy things. Last Saturday, I attended a funeral for a dad pretty close to my age who has one teenage daughter and one 22-year-old daughter. His daughter and my oldest are really close. And so I went to his funeral because my daughter couldn't be there, and it was heavy. The 19-year-old had to get up in front of a crowd of people and eulogize her father. I mean, no 19-year-old should have to bear that sort of burden. After the funeral, I was thinking, man, I should go say something to my daughter's friend. And think about this. Here's a guy who for their full-time job works at a church and should be able to navigate grief and hardship pretty well. I should always know what to say. And I remember thinking, oh, there she is over there. You know, there's this reception going on. I should go say something to her. And then there's this other part of my brain is like, what do you mean say something to her? She doesn't want to hear from her friend's dad. Well, no, but she should know that there are people who are thinking about their family and praying for them. Of course, she already knows there are people who are thinking about her family and praying for them. This is a funeral, for goodness sake. What do you think people are doing? Well, yeah, but you could say something, and maybe you could let her know that your family and your daughter has just been weighed down by the burdens that she's carrying. Oh, she doesn't need to know that. She doesn't need to hear from you. What are you going to say anything? What if you say something stupid and make it worse? Have you ever had that sort of wrestling match in your brain over what do I do when someone I know is going through hardship? How do I respond? What do I say? How do I express care? And the truth is, when we don't know what to do, we often default to doing nothing. When we don't know what to do, we do nothing. That's sort of the baseline code. And we have a bunch of ways to do nothing. We don't ever say it that way. You don't just tell your brain, do nothing. I mean, I guess sometimes you do. I have to because I'm a little bit of a leap before I look kind of guy. But we have a bunch of ways to do nothing. Here's just several. I'll run through real quick for you. One of the ways we do nothing is, I don't know what to say, so I will say nothing. Someone else is going to do something, so I will do nothing. I'd probably just be in the way, so I will do nothing. Their problem is deep and complex, and I'm not sure how to navigate that, so I will do nothing. I don't really know them well enough, so I'm going to do nothing. They probably just want to be left alone, so I'll do nothing. We never say the words, I'll do nothing, but that's the result. That's what ends up happening. And this isn't like a modern dilemma. This isn't just modern America. In fact, in the story of the Good Samaritan, the parable that Jesus made up, remember in that story, there's 3 people that pass by this man on the side of the road that needs help, and the first 2 people are a Levite and a priest. And in the story, Jesus is telling he has the first 2 people that you would kind of hopefully expect to help the guy pass on the other side of the road. And Jesus doesn't give us a reason. He doesn't tell us what's going on in their internal dialogue in the story. But you can imagine, it's not hard to imagine that they passed by like I would love to stop and help, but I'm needed at the temple here. I would love to stop and help, but if I help that guy, what if he dies and then I'm unclean according to the Old Testament ceremonial law? There was lots of reasons not to do anything. In this final sermon, we've been preaching a series called Bent Not Broken, and we've been exploring suffering. And primarily, we've been exploring our own suffering. And I think we like to do that. Nobody likes to suffer, but I think we like to think about our suffering. We like to think about what's going on in our lives and how are we hurting and how are we struggling and how can other people help us. So we've been doing that for 3 weeks, and now it's time to focus on other people's suffering. Because you're not the only one going through something. Even if you're dealing with something hard, it's so funny to me that every once in a while, when I start to feel a little bit of self-pity, I'll be like, oh, life is hard, and, my garage door opener doesn't work, and my tire's a little low, and, I'll be pitying myself for dumb things. And then you'll run into someone who's really struggling with something, and it kind of puts it all into perspective. So the people around you, the people you know, your neighbors, your coworkers are struggling. Think about this. Maybe you could just pull out of your life one particular scenario. This isn't you, but somebody in your life that's going through something hard, and let's work through this through that lens. Maybe you have a neighbor that you used to do backyard barbecues with, and your kids played with their kids, and that neighbor is now going through a divorce, and you don't know what to do. Because that's messy and ugly. You're not sure what's going on, and you don't know how to help, and you don't know what to say, and so you see them in the driveway getting in their car, and you kind of wave, but you don't know how to interact. Or maybe you have a coworker you liked, one of the few that you really liked, and they just got laid off. And now they're texting you saying, I don't know what I'm going to do, and you're like, me either. I don't know what to say. Maybe you had a friend or have a friend who has got this complex, complicated, difficult, tense relationship with a parent. Maybe a parent who in their past has been hard or even abusive, and they're trying to figure out, how do I have a relationship with that parent? And they're asking you questions, and you're like, I don't know. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. And it could just be a variety of things. It can be a diagnosis. It can be mental illness. It can just be loss, or just that grief, and they're talking to you, and you don't know what to do. And when we don't know what do we do? Nothing. So how do we help everyone take their next step closer to Jesus, even in the middle of their suffering? Even in the middle of their suffering. So here's what we're going to do this morning. We're going to offer you one direct truth. This is the thing that Paul, who wrote this text that we're going to read, says, here's what you do when you're facing someone else's suffering. And then, in that same text, he offers 4 distinctives, 4 nuances that are really valuable for us to think about as we help navigate somebody else's suffering. So number 1, the direct truth. This is Galatians chapter 1, Galatians chapter 6, starting in verse 1. He says this, brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in a sin, now that's one we don't want to deal with, right? Oh, man, their sin? Ugh. I don't want to have to talk to them and say that, hey, you're doing something that will potentially mess up your life, and they're going to get mad at me. And not only are they going to get mad at me, they're going to look at me and say, well, you're not so perfect, mister. I know a few things about you. And let's just avoid that. And Paul's like, if someone's caught in a sin, you who live by the Spirit, and he's just talked about what that looks like in chapter 5, you should restore that person gently. It's a very key word. Restore that person gently, but watch yourselves, or you also may be tempted. Now, we could spend the entire sermon here, and we're not going to, but the church world hasn't always navigated this tension well. When someone we are around is caught in a sin, how do we interact with them? I feel like in some of my experiences at church, not Woodbury, but other places, a lot of my experiences have been, we've interpreted this passage to say, if someone is caught in a sin, you should call them out harshly. Avoid them completely. But that's not what Paul writes. Sometimes I think Christians think like, listen, they made their bed, they got to lie in it. They caused their own suffering. They got to deal with it. If I jump in and try to help them out, it's not going to solve any problems. They're not going to learn any lessons. But that's not what Paul says. Aren't you glad Jesus didn't do that to you when you were caught in sin? Isn't that great that he didn't say, you messed up, buddy. See your way out. I'm glad he didn't do that. And this is important for us to acknowledge that even self-imposed suffering caused by sin is worthy of our compassionate service, just like Jesus did for us. But he introduces a broader principle in the next verse. This is verse 2. We want to really isolate this idea. But he says, carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. And then he says in verse 3, if anyone thinks they're something when they're not, they deceive themselves. Super fascinating little section here. Very, very cool. That word burdens literally means heaviness. Like a heaviness that people have. And people are going through some heavy stuff, some emotionally heavy stuff. Suffering can be heavy, and it means heaviness. But it's not just sin, and this is important. This is a little bit different than the first verse. Heaviness doesn't just mean that they've done something bad and they're burdened with sin. It means that life has dealt them a blow that is heavy. It has given them something to carry that is heavy. And the word actually can mean authority, like someone who has a heaviness in a sense of authority. It can mean profound. If somebody teaches you something that is like, wow, that is a deep truth, they would use this same word. So it's not just sin, it's life. Life can be heavy. And maybe the way to understand it for us is this, that a burden is a heaviness that is threatening to crush someone. Roy Williams is the current record holder for the squat at 1,080 pounds. I didn't know there was a competition for this. I guess I should have known. It's all in the Olympics. I mean, look at that bar bending. Now, that's 1,080 pounds, and this is all natural. If you want to look up, there's some guys who have probably injected themselves with some performance-enhancing things that have lifted more weight, but this is the record for all natural, 1,080 pounds. I was Googling, ChatGPT, what things are about 1,000 pounds in the world? And it said a polar bear is about 1,000 pounds. So Roy Williams, in a scenario that required someone to lift a polar bear, could do it. That's pretty impressive. Now, I don't know why humans do this stuff to themselves. What are you going to do with that strength? Really? Are you going to walk around hoping there's like a tragedy you can prevent or a wall falling you can hold up? I don't know what you do with this like later on in life, but that's, I cannot do that. I cannot do that. Believe me, never mind. I have some thoughts about Roy Williams, but I'm telling you, it's pretty impressive, right? It's pretty impressive. Look how many spotters Roy Williams has to have. 5 guys are there just in case the weight gets too heavy. 5 adult males are there to help him in case this goes sideways. Here's the truth. You are called to be a spiritual spotter for the people that God has placed in your life. You're called to do that. You didn't sign up for it. You didn't ask for that responsibility, but by virtue of being a human that exists in the world where other people are dealing with the crushing weight of life, you are called to be someone who helps them lift that weight when things get too difficult and too hard. You're a spotter. That's who you are. You're a spiritual spotter. So Paul, remember, our default is to do nothing. Paul says, when you see suffering, when you see heaviness, do something. It's deceptively simple. When you see heaviness, do something. And you're like, well, yeah, of course, I wouldn't expect anything else. But this is valuable. One important caveat, I was thinking about this week, and this is really tough, because we as a church family here, the Woodbury Church of Christ, are awesome at doing something. And so I'm working on the sermon, and it's like Thursday, and I'm like, I don't even think I should preach this. I mean, this would be like telling Roy Williams how to lift weight. Like that, people at Woodbury are really, really good at this. And some of you are like, well, I've had some suffering and people didn't help me. Well, let us know. We'll help you. Come on. But people are, I've been the recipient of this. I've seen it. I've seen it with my own eyes. We are really good at this. And I was thinking like, well, how am I going to tell church to be better at helping others go through suffering when we're already good at it? But let me tell you just a couple things that I think are valuable for you to know, because there's some stuff that you don't know. And there's some stuff that we can't tell you. I told you church is kind of a conduit for a lot of things going on in people's lives, and we just can't tell you. We can't get up here and tell you what is happening because people are going through some really vulnerable, emotionally raw, difficult situations, and they don't want everybody to know. A lot of the prayer requests that we receive are private. And we just can't tell everybody, hey, this family's going through this. Please go over and do something for them. But also outside of church, we get a steady stream of people who are not connected to the Woodbury Church of Christ that come to us and say, hey, I'm in a real bind. I need some help. Just this week, we got a call from a lady who's taking care of her elderly parents, and she's working and going to school. Her parents are both in very poor health, and they've gotten behind on their electric bill, and the electricity got shut off. And she called the church building crying because she doesn't know what to do. And our default, when people don't know what to do and we don't know what to do, is to do nothing. But I'm telling you, the church here is so good that there's a family who has electricity this week because of your generosity. We're not going to post that on Facebook. We're not going to write out their names. We're not going to say, hey, guess what? This person has able to keep the items in their fridge cold because of your generosity. But that's true. That happens all the time. People's rent being paid, people's medical bills. That stuff is happening all the time. And I wish Jesus had said, hey, when you do good to others, make sure you announce it on social media and maybe blow a few trumpets, because it would be nice to be able to tell all of you how much good your generosity is doing. Jesus, unfortunately, kind of said the opposite of that. So I just want you to know the church here is just incredible. It is happening a lot. And if you're ever sitting there saying, well, is the church really doing anything? Yes. But we're dealing with delicate life situations. And unfortunately, we can't make an Instagram reel about it. But if you individually are like me, sometimes you do wrestle with what exactly do I do? What exactly do I say? So I want you to notice as he goes on here, this is pretty interesting. Verse 4, he says, each one should test their own actions. Then they can take pride in themselves alone without comparing themselves to someone else. For each should carry their own load. And that's the end of that 5-verse section. So let me give you a couple distinctives that we need to understand how to be better burden bearers. Number one, everybody needs help. Everybody needs help. If you're sitting here in this room thinking, yeah, I'm pretty good, you are sorely mistaken, my friend. Everyone needs help. Several years ago, I saw this. It's just this kind of stuff is so interesting to see. I saw a video of a car accident. I don't like looking at videos of car accidents, but this one made the news because it was a Mercedes-Benz GLE, and it had run over a pedestrian in New York City. Now, I'm going to tell you, the pedestrian's fine, surprisingly. No major injuries at all. I didn't even need to go to the hospital. But that would be a pretty horrific situation to be in, where you're just walking along the street texting somebody, and the next thing you know, you're underneath a car, pinned, and can't get out, and you're stuck. So the Mercedes-Benz GLE, I looked this up, is a 5,000-pound car. So even Roy Williams can't lift it. But within about 20 seconds of the accident happening, there's like 30 guys that rush over to this car and lift it off this woman, and somebody helps her and drags her out. Now, this is the car over here. I know I had to blow it up so you could see it. I wanted to show you this picture on the right, which really has nothing to do with it, but do you see what she's doing? Yeah, she's like, I'm sure she's tweeting, just under a Mercedes, you know. Had to get a Mercedes one way or the other. I thought that was, I just wanted you to know she's okay. That was part of it, too. When you hear about somebody being run over by a car, it sounds awful. But I think the thing that I want to point out is that all of us are stuck under a Mercedes GLE. And we need people to come along and lift that. All of us struggle with that, and so do the people that you're around. They're underneath these heavy burdens, and we have a consistent human failure is our tendency to overestimate our ability to deal with our own problems. I just want you to hear this, because very few people are going to tell it to you, because this is just not the way modern American thinking works. But you are not equipped to deal with life alone. God did not make you that way. You are not. If you think you're nailing it and you don't need any help, I'm just telling you, you are not, and you do. We have this overconfidence in our ability to deal with it. And I know that flies in the face of like, no, my parents told me I have to lift myself up by my bootstraps. Go ahead and try that. Literally, take your bootstraps and try to lift yourself up. It's not going to work. The analogy doesn't even work. It doesn't work. We are not equipped. We are not made to do that. This is years ago, but just an example of how we try to think that we've got it figured out and we don't, but I think this is all of us. But I was driving through the Rocky Mountains, and it's these roads that kind of switch back going up the hill, and the minivan in front of me had a mattress tied to the roof, and of course, it was tied to the roof with some twine, I'm sure, but of course the guy had his driver's side window down and his hand out the window holding onto the mattress, right? And I'm just thinking, if the wind catches that thing, you're not doing anything. And as we were driving, it's kind of funny, as we were driving, I was watching the one hand out the window, and there was this dog, playing around in the seats. And at one point, I saw the guy with the other hand reach over and pet the dog, and I'm like, who's driving? You should not be driving. We just think that we got it when we don't. Have you ever told the clerk at the store that you didn't need help when you did? Yeah, that's my default. I never tell them I need help. And then, once I've told them I don't need help, I don't want to go back and say, well, actually, I was lying earlier, and I can't find the salt. Have you ever told people you were fine when you were not fine? Yeah, we don't want to get into it. We don't want to burden them. We don't want to weigh them down. Yes, of course we do that. I think a key milestone in human growth is coming to terms with the fact that life will deal us problems that we cannot bear alone. And these could be practical problems like you're stuck underneath a 5,000-pound Mercedes, or they could be spiritual, emotional problems like being under 5,000 pounds of grief and loss and confusion. Life drops stuff on us. And so if you're thinking, I wonder if that person needs help. Yes, they do. Bear one another's burdens. Number two, the second nuance. So the first nuance is to default toward action. But the second nuance is humility, not heroics. Humility, not heroics. This is so important. Have you ever had somebody help you, and then they kept bringing it up that they helped you? You ever had that happen? Hey, yeah, remember when I helped you move, and I was there all day, and it was really hot? Remember that? Yeah. You're like, where's this going? Have you ever had someone give you money to maybe make a big purchase or help you with that, and then they bring it up and they're like, yeah, you wouldn't even be driving that car if it weren't for me. Better think about that, huh? Have you ever had a coworker who just constantly talked about how they covered for you and how much they do for you? Yeah, when people do that, you're getting a sense like, yeah, you helped, but I'm sensing there's some strings attached to that help, and I'm kind of wishing you hadn't helped me at all now. I have a friend, and this is not Woodbury Church of Christ, but I have a friend who works in another church, and he said that someone came up to him one Sunday, and he was like, music here is too loud. You need to turn it down. And my friend was like, well, if you didn't sit right in front of the speaker, man, if you would move, of course, they're not going to move because they got their spot. And he said, well, I'm so sorry. The tech guys, they got it all figured out. He was just trying to, move past the problem. And the guy was like, well, I give a lot of money here, so, And my friend said, I wish you wouldn't. If your generosity comes with strings attached, it's not generosity. We don't want it. I wish you wouldn't. I was a little shocked he said that, but I was like, good for you. Notice all the caution around what Paul writes here. Look at verse 1. Back in verse 1. Brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in a sin, you who live by the Spirit should restore that person gently. But watch yourselves. Verse 3, if anyone thinks there's something, this is all surrounding helping. If anyone thinks there's something when they are not, they deceive themselves. Test your own action. So if you're helping people and you're like, I'm so much better than you because look how lame you are for having that problem. He's like, listen, you're missing the point of what it means to help. Each one should test their own actions. And you can take pride in yourselves alone. Don't compare yourselves to anyone else. Each should carry their own load. This passage is written to people who are helping. He's saying, don't help with strings attached. If your mission is to help others, in fact, literally, he says just basically two commands. This is interesting. He says, help others 2 different times in these 5 verses. He says, restore that person and carry their burdens. But there are 5 warnings because helping people can put you in a dangerous position. 5 warnings. Christianity has been misused to guilt people into an unhealthy sort of helping. I'll help you. I'll give you a cup of cold water, but you have to fill in the blank. And that's just not what Paul is asking us to do. If Paul had, and I don't know this because I'm not a therapist, so please take everything I'm about to say with a grain of salt, but I think if Paul had therapeutic mental health terms at his fingertips, he might have used some more psychological terms here. He may have talked about things like codependency and boundaries and enabling and the savior complex. Because help is sometimes control masquerading as Christian virtue. I'll help you, but what you're saying is I want to control the situation. And if you're not going to do what I think you should do, then I'm not going to help you. It's not help. Helping that's not helpful. They literally call it the savior complex. I don't know if these terms are still proper, so forgive me if they're not, if you know better than I do. But I think they describe some important dynamics. So next slide, if you would. Helping that's not helpful. Just a few things. When we make an idol out of our role as a helper, that's not healthy. When we're saying only I can do it, that's the savior complex, and if I don't do it, then nobody's going to do it, that's not healthy. Have you ever heard of pathological altruism? This is one of my favorites. I hadn't heard this phrase before, but I think it's great. It's our help, and it comes with strings attached. I'm going to control your life by helping you, or even boundaries when you give the recipient of your help inappropriate control over your life. That's tough. These are tough things to navigate. And these are some of the reasons why sometimes we get involved in or we see a need and we're like, I just think I'm going to pass on the other side of the road because this is complex and messy and I don't know what to do. Building an identity around the idea that you don't have their problems doesn't make you a healthier person. Using your help to control the situation isn't help. It's a nuance that Paul writes in this passage. It's important. Number 3, exceptions aren't excuses. Exceptions aren't excuses. I told you this a little bit. So not only do we hear a lot of requests at church, people call us all the time. So some of them are completely legit, and we try to really do a good job of understanding the person's situation and trying to help them out in a really helpful way. But we get a lot of calls that feel pretty scammy too. That happens a lot too. And you've had this happen, right? You've been walking around downtown and somebody's like, hey, do you have a couple dollars? I'm hungry. I haven't eaten, in 2 years or something like that, whatever sob story. And you're like, I don't have cash, right? I'm sorry. I always pat my pockets. I know I don't have cash, but I'm like, oh, sorry, don't have cash. I know it. I just don't have cash. And then I'll say something like, but hey, there's a McDonald's. Can I buy you a meal? No. I just really need cash. Do you? So at church here, we have a no cash policy. We don't give out cash. And we've had some really weird situations. We had a person come in. They said, I need money for gas. Oh, great. We'll help you. We'll go down to the gas station with you, and you fill up, and we'll pay. Well, no, I need the cash. Well, no problem. Well, I'm actually going a long way away, so if you won't want to go to that gas station. Oh, that's no problem at all. Just tell us what gas station it is. We'll get you a gift card for that gas station. No. I need cash because what if they don't take your gift card, or what if it doesn't work? Well, then you can call us or have them call us. We'll figure it out. We'll do whatever we can. And we actually, this is years ago, I was sitting in one of the offices, and we had this person requesting help, yelling at us, angry at us, because we were trying to give them what they were asking for, but it's not what they really wanted. And this happens. It does happen a lot. And it is super unpleasant to have our sympathies hijacked. It's happened to all of us. And it's tricky, and it's not obvious. And so the question we have to wrestle with is who does need help, and who's taking advantage, and what is help, and what is enabling? The cool thing is Paul addresses this. Did you notice this in this passage, Galatians 5:5? In the end of this section we just read, he says, or 6:5 rather, each one should carry their own load. Wait, aren't we supposed to carry one another's burdens? And then just a few verses later, you're saying carry your own load. Which is it, Paul? What are we supposed to do? It's cool because it's not a contradiction. It's a distinction. A burden is a grand piano. You cannot move that thing alone, right? And every time somebody says, hey, any chance you can come over this Saturday and help me move? You should ask the question, do you have a piano of any sort? If it's not electric, I'm out. A burden is a grand piano. It's a different word. It's kind of cool. The burden is this heaviness, this crushing weight. But load is like that guy who's like, oh, don't worry. You guys get the piano. I got the bench. You guys get the couch. I'll get the cushions, right? You know. That's a different word. It means something light. And so we have to, as human beings, use some discernment and look at the situations people are dealing with. And some of them are like, oh, I cannot carry these cushions. You ever, parents, you have to do that with your kids? You're like, you're going to be fine, right? You have to navigate those distinctions because you have to help them understand that what they're dealing with, they can deal with. They can figure it out. They can help. And so you have to determine the difference between grand pianos and piano benches. But the danger is that the exception becomes the excuse. They've done studies in several big cities, so this is really, really hard to figure out. But the question is, do panhandlers, people on the side of the road when you're making a left turn in downtown traffic, do those people really need help? Do those people really need help? And a lot of you have thoughts about this because you've had to navigate it so many times. Right? You know, and if there's 2 left turn lanes, you go to the far one so you don't have to look the person in the eye, or you like make an apologetic gesture. Some of you keep cash just for this. Some of you keep food or bags. It's wonderful. But you've all had to navigate this kind of thing. There's a study done, and it's very complicated to do the study, but they discovered that about 5 to 15% of the people on the side of the road holding a sign don't really need help. And I don't know what would make a person do that. I don't know if that sounds like a fun way to spend their Saturday morning, but it doesn't sound to me. But about 5 to 15% don't really need help. They have cars and houses, and they're just fine. Which means about 85% do need help. But do you know what I have done? I'm sure none of you have done this. I have taken that 5 to 15% and used it as justification not to help the 85%. That's what I've done. I've made the exception the rule. So I want to offer you this little tool that I think could be helpful, and let's call it the 25% rule. Let's say you're in situations where 25% of the time the person that's asking for help or needing help doesn't really need it. Our temptation is to shape our response guarding against that 25 and missing out on the 75% of people who do need it, who do need help. And I'm just telling you, be extremely careful. Paul says what you should just rather be taken advantage of. It's going to happen, but your default should be to carry one another's burdens. All right, finally, last but not least, your strength might be their weakness. And this is just one of the things I love about church community. One of the things that is so amazing is just when you're part of a church community, you're walking with the church community, there are things that people in this room are awesome at that I'm terrible at. Like if one of you said, hey, Patrick, you need to prepare food for 100 people by 6 p.m. tonight, I would freeze. I wouldn't know what to do. I would go home and how do you boil water? I wouldn't know no clue. And some of you would be like kind of annoyed, but you would be able to, yeah, no problem. I can feed 100 people. Some of you are just like, it's easy, no big deal. Make some noodles, make some meat, it's fine, it's great, and it would be delicious and it would be awesome. That would be no sweat for you, and it would make some of us crumble. If somebody came to you and said, hey, any chance you could speak to 100 middle school students at 6 o'clock tonight? Some of you would be like, I will move states. I will leave. I will go into the witness protection program if you try to make me do anything. This happens all the time, by the way. I know some of you are really fine being up on stage, but I ask people all the time, hey, do you mind reading the scripture? Are you interested in reading the scripture? Lots of people are like, I would rather die. I would rather die than get up here and read something that is printed out for me. And I'm like, I don't get it. It just doesn't make sense to me. That is no problem. I can handle that. And that's the wonderful thing about church family is that God has brought together people who have different abilities and skills. And so something that is feeling overwhelming for you, for Roy Williams, is light. For some people in this room, your difficult, deep, heavy burden, your parenting struggle that you're just coming undone, there's somebody who's been through it and they're like, oh yeah, here's the 3 things you do. You can solve it. There's somebody. And that's the amazing thing about being part of a church community is that we've got your ninja level skills in some area that is keeping somebody else up at night. And that's the entire point of this passage. Paul is writing, this is how you be a church. And he actually writes earlier in the letter, he's like, you guys are tearing each other apart, but you're missing the point. You have this beautiful opportunity to build each other up and carry one another's burdens. By the way, this is just a little programming note, but this is why small groups are so crucial. You're just not going to find that when you're sitting in a room of 200. You'll find that in a room of 10. It's hard to find in a room of 200. So if somebody invites you to get to know their small group or part of their small group or part of their young adult group, do it. That's how you get involved and connected to church. All right, I'm going to wrap up with this. Every time there's a national tragedy, a politician says this phrase, and it really makes people mad. They always say something like, well, our thoughts and prayers are with the victims. And it's become such a cliche that at protests, it started to show up as like, hey, we don't need your thoughts and prayers. We don't want your thoughts and prayers. Your thoughts and prayers don't save lives. Stop thinking and stop praying and start doing something. And those protesters have a point, right? Because sometimes, and you've probably done it too, when someone's going through something, because you don't know what to do, and instead of doing something, and not that prayer isn't doing something, you're like, well, you're in our thoughts. And that's nice. But Paul is saying, do something. And here's why I think we should say thoughts and prayers. I don't agree with these protesters. I think we should say it. Here's why. Because is there somebody in your life that has been dominating your thoughts, whose suffering has been dominating your thoughts? Is it a neighbor, a coworker, a friend, somebody here at church? Have they been dominating your thoughts? Have you found yourself, man, I need to pray for them? Your thoughts and your prayers should direct your actions. See, you should think about them. You should pray for them, and then you should help carry their burdens. It's all part of the process. Don't stop too soon. So whose suffering has been dominating your thoughts? Whose burdens have been in your prayers? Those are people that you can be serving. I'm going to wrap up with this. Bible talks a lot about one another passages. Here's a list of one another passages. If you're looking for I need specific verbs, Patrick, there you go. Here's some things you can do. But I think this is all the one another passages in the New Testament. But I think there's a really interesting thing because if you're like, that's too much, can you simplify it for me? Yes, just do the do not ones. Or do not do the do not ones. Just don't judge and don't provoke, don't envy, don't lie, don't grumble. Start there, and then you can work your way to the heavier stuff. Be specific in your helping. Just focus on the do not ones. We're going to wrap up with a song this morning, a song called Hymn of Heaven. And I just want to encourage you this morning, because I know when we think about other suffering, it can be easy to feel guilty because we're like, well, I need to do something. I don't know what to do. Well, we've given you some options about what to do. But you as a church are good at this. Let's just help people move closer to Jesus by bearing one another's burdens.